then touches their mouth, nose, or eyes. The best ways to stop the spread of the coronavirus are to wash your hands often with soap and water, or use hand sanitizer until you can wash your
I like that music.
I know listen, this music is Evelyn Champagne King's brother lives here in New Haven and is married to Karen King, Johnny King. So he co-wrote this song for Evelyn Champagne King. That's her singing. So they've given me permission to use it. So I've been killing it for like the last 3 years. I probably should get new music, but awesome. I just love it. I know. Awesome. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? So everybody, this is Patrick Dunn, the executive director of the New Haven Pride Center.
Yeah.
You know, I did not know much about you, Patrick. I only came aware of you 2 years ago at the Arts Council luncheon. Yeah. You had the big drag queen extravaganza.
Yeah. I did do that, didn't I?
and flipped everybody's wig up in that piece. I don't know people didn't know what to do with themselves. They knew that they were thoroughly entertained and they enjoyed it, but then they didn't know why or how they couldn't enjoy it. So it was glorious. And then I didn't make the connection that was you, part of the drag community. I just didn't make the connection. So I would see you, and I was like, I don't know who that is, right? But then I would see your alter ego, and I would be fully invested in that. And I was like, I don't know who this other person is. And then you were like, I was like, oh my God.
You know, it's one of the fun things about being a drag performer. It's one of the fun things about being a drag performer, definitely, like, you know, not fooling people, I guess, like the wrong attitude, but like this idea that they are two different people and some people have relationships with only one of them.
Well, I thoroughly enjoy it, and I've seen y'all do it. So what brings you to the, okay, so now it's another thing that I learned. You have a very interesting background. I did not know that you were American Turkish.
Yeah.
I just don't know why I didn't know that. I don't know how I would have known.
It's, you know, one of those things. You know, there's a lot to people, and some people it's you know, some people it's not as obvious when you look at them.
Well,
but no,
I
came to the US when I was 18.
Yeah, so I was reading, and you know, it's a funny thing because I pulled up the New Haven Independent did a whole piece on you back in 2017 when you arrived, when you became the executive director of the Pride Center. Because before that, the Pride Center didn't have an executive director. They had a whole host of volunteers, but no leadership or leadership at that level.
Correct.
And then here you come.
They had no staff at all.
So how did you get? How did you get here? How did they get you? How did you find this? Of all the juke joints in all of the world.
Well, so I came to New Haven just about 10 years ago now, and I moved here with this idea that I would spend a year in New Haven and then probably move to New York. And so I applied for all these different jobs in New York and interviewed and saw a job opening actually on the Arts Council website at Arts and Ideas. And I applied for the job at Arts and Ideas because I hadn't heard of them, but I thought it was really interesting organization and like this idea of making art accessible to anybody to be able to participate. And that was the year that they had Yo-Yo Ma, and I was super impressed that Yo-Yo Ma was going to be free because Yo-Yo Ma was somebody I had always admired and always wanted to see but could never afford to. And so I went into the interview and I actually got a job offer in New York that I turned down before hearing from Arts and Ideas because I was just so excited about this organization. And I worked for Arts and Ideas for 7 years. In the
really?
development office. Yeah. I worked in the development office with Tom Griggs and Mary Lou, and later, after Mary Lou left, Liz and all the folks there. So yeah, I took 7 years at Arts and Ideas, and I went to the Pride Center's gala kind of semi-regularly because I felt like as a responsible member of the LGBTQ community, I should go and support the community center. And they announced at the gala that they were, hoping to hire a staff member. And I basically went into the board and I was like, I think you should hire me, and I think you should throw out your entire plan and hire me full time, and this is why. And I laid out like what I thought I could do if I was brought in full time versus they were originally thinking of it as like a 10-hour-a-week job. And they were going to ease into it. And I was like, listen, you got to do this, you got to do it big, and you got to do it bold, and you got to just do it, because if you do this at a 10-hour rate, it's gonna take years before anything really happens. And I said, I can come in here, and I was like, I'll risk my livelihood. I will come in here. I know you only have enough money to pay me for 3 months, but I will do it, and watch, we're gonna succeed. And fortunately, the bull in a China shop worked.
That's pretty bold and badass.
It was terrifying, let me tell you. I was secretly very, very terrified. Yeah.
So you take over this New Haven Pride Center. So you came with already a sense of, I'm gonna do something with this. This is the vision I have for it.
Yeah. I wanted to give it back to the community. Our founder, John Allen, often describes the Pride Center as being a clubhouse. And clubhouses are innately prohibitive of community in a way because they feel exclusive. If you only know about it because you know someone who knows about it, that's going to create exclusivity, and particularly exclusivity of people who probably need it the most. And I don't think that was intentional. It was just how it was, because when you're a group of volunteers and everybody only has an hour to give a week, it's only going to be what it's going to be, right? And so when I came in, I came in with this idea of radical inclusion and prioritization of groups within the larger LGBTQ community that felt very isolated, which is how we kind of built the whole organization. So like when we started hiring our program officers, their focuses were meant to be on areas and groups of people who feel very isolated within the larger community, women, youth, the trans community, the Latinx community. In Connecticut, there's no Latinx queer programming at all. There's organizations like Junta and the Hispanic Federation that do amazing things for the queer community, but that's not their primary focus, right? And so it's a small piece of what they do, versus we have the ability to really focus on that. So we hired Mac Cisnaris to specifically focus on that, for example. And that's just how we've been building, is this around this idea of radical inclusion.
So it sounds like, it looks like from where I sit, that you have, in a short period of time, centered this community in the larger dialogue of what's going on. So now people don't have conversations without you at the table. At least that's how I sit. Now you might say, well, there's tables I'm not at yet. But I mean, I think when there's conversations to be had in this community, that people have an actual go-to person to talk to that particular community, which I think is an amazing, in a short period of time.
I really appreciate it, and I'm also the first person to get up from the table and say, I'm not the right person to be at this table, but let me bring these 3 people in to be at the table and represent the center or the community, depending on what the conversation is. Because the bottom line is the LGBTQ or community or the queer community is extremely diverse. And one person cannot represent the whole community. It's impossible because not one person can understand all the varying degrees of experience. So I appreciate, like, I love blowing open doors and being like, hey, where's the queer community in this conversation? Or why aren't you including us? But then saying like, this person is going to sit down at the table, not me, because I'm not the right person to sit at the table right now. But yeah, and I appreciate you recognizing that, because it's been a really interesting experience, kind of breaking down these doors that were rooms that we were definitely never invited to. And so I've really, it's been a personal goal of mine, and making sure like we're represented every step of the way. You know, we may not necessarily be 50% of the population, but we're still a group of people that deserve access to be represented, especially in major conversations about our city or our state or even our neighborhood.
So talk to me a little bit about, so it's 3 years, you've been sitting in this seat, kind of close to 3 years, right? Almost 3 years. And so how do you continue to frame a narrative of inclusion in the face of people still feeling very anti-queer, anti this community?
You know, it's tough. Quite. You're asking me some hard news questions at 9:15 in the morning. No. You know, there's a level of I'm trying to figure out how to say this without including a swear word. There's at certain point you have to just kind of just do it and ignore the people who the naysayers, and ignore people who are on the wrong side of history, and just keep doing it and chugging forward. And you know, there's certainly times that we face you know, major discrimination. I mean, it's happening right now. There's a major case at the state right now around the inclusion of trans youth in high school sports. Huge conversation happening right now that the Republican Party of PAC has decided to take the wrong side of history, which is, you know, their choice. But you know, we're battling that and COVID-19 simultaneously in our community right now, and that's just one issue, right? There's all kinds of issues, and the thing that I've learned, and I knew this already, but I've really come to understand in a very different way since coming to the center is, you know, our community, the queer community, has a little bit of everybody in it. It's why we have a rainbow, right? We're a rainbow community. We have literally a little bit of every single minority group, every majority group, every form of privilege, and every form of discrimination affects us as a community, because we have members of our community that are part of every single diversity quota you could possibly imagine. And so when something's happening directed towards any group of people, it affects our community. And so we have to be constantly aware of like, this bill is coming up and it's going to affect women's healthcare. So, but understand that women's healthcare is also queer healthcare, because there are queer women that are affected by these decisions. And so making sure that we're constantly aware of everything going on around us, also, and fighting for equality for people who may not necessarily be queer, like fighting for women's health, or you know, tear down of racially suppressive systems, or you know, whatever. All of those things directly impact our community as much as it does a larger other population. And by being aware and making sure that we're constantly in the know of what's going on with other parts of the community at large, makes us radically inclusive, because it makes us being smart within our own structures and addressing things that we see going on in the larger world, and making sure it's not going on in our community and affecting you know, other community members.
So you quickly mobilized access to resources as soon as this COVID-19 became an issue. I mean, you really have mobilized and made sure that this particular community, and these resources could be tapped by anybody, but that this community would not be left behind in accessing resources. And that was no small undertaking. Like, you immediately mobilized, because a lot of the queer folks are heavily involved in the arts community, and the arts community is taking an enormous hit right now. With Broadway shutting down, the gigging community shutting down, schools are shutting down, art teachers are out of work. I mean, so this is a huge thing, not unlike what I remember seeing in the early 80s, in the mid 80s, around HIV and AIDS, when it was, with so much unknown and fear and panic and desperation. But there was not this mobilizing of information this quickly, the way that I'm seeing with COVID-19. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I want to give all the props to my staff, because honestly, I've been dealing with a lot of the bigger picture, how do we react to this? And it's my staff, it's people like Juan Carlos and Maya and Laura, who are our full-time staff, who are literally spending hours every day making sure that we're up to date on every single resource around the state, federally, locally, like within our city, because there's different resources within New Haven versus Hartford, and making sure, because we have, we serve people all over the state. We don't just serve the city of New Haven. So making sure that we know, like, where are the food pickup locations in Waterbury? Where are the food pickup locations in Bridgeport? Making sure that we know all this information, because we have folks that come and see us from all over, right? And I have to give all the props to my staff, because my staff are working literally around the clock to make sure that this kind of stuff stays so up to date, and that we're constantly updating it. We increased our kind of e-blasts out into the community to once a week, every Wednesday, and we always have a section that are like, here are all the new resources we found since last week, and then it goes over to a page on our website that has everything that we found overall. And obviously those, as you just stated, those resources are open to anybody, because a lot of them are universal. They're things like unemployment information, childcare information, what do you do if you've lost your job, all of that, self-care. Because obviously queer people need self-care just as much as anybody else right now, because we're all home alone or trapped with like the person that we may love or may not love, but we're in a house together. So but really, honestly, it's been and it's one of these things that Juan Carlos, who's our director of case management, we're very lucky that he comes to us from Planned Parenthood, so obviously he has a lot of kind of insider knowledge around some of the particularly healthcare related things at this kind of craziness time. But Juan Carlos and I are also completely dueling it. So it's like, how do we respond to everything that people need right this minute, which is a lot of things, unemployment, SNAP benefits, all this stuff. But then what are we going to need to have in place for that day that people can go outside again? Because that day people can go outside again, I can only imagine the line that we're going to have at the Pride Center of people looking for things, because they need things. And we know that the queer community is very wealthy, but also there's a lot of queer people that are not very wealthy. And I don't know the statistic off my head, but there's a massive percentage of queer people who work hourly jobs, jobs like hairdressers and all the stereotypes. But then there's plenty of us that work jobs that are hourly in various different fields, and are teachers and this and that and this. And these folks are going to be out of massive amounts of income. I was talking to one of my really good friends who's a school bus driver. He's been out of work for 3 weeks. He still hasn't gotten his first unemployment check. And the governor the other day mentioned that it may take up to 5 weeks. So he will essentially have no income for 8 weeks. How do you even financially begin to recover from something like that? And Connecticut still hasn't passed any legislation around not paying your rent. So everybody had to pay their rent yesterday, whether or not they've been getting paid for the last 3 weeks. And so we know that there's going to be people kind of on the other end of this, whether it ends in May or in June or July, hopefully not that long, but whenever this ends, that are going to be desperate need of help. So how do we prepare for that moment is, that's the other thing that we're super focused on, because the moment we can reopen our doors, we're going to have to be ready, because the community deserves us to be ready.
I did not know. So how many Pride centers are there, or are y'all just the only? I mean, I'm sure there must be other queer serving organizations, or am I wrong? Or help me frame this out for me.
Yeah, so it's tricky to count it. There are I would say there's 4 queer organizations. So that's True Colors, which is a statewide youth-focused organization based in Hartford. There's the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective that's in Hartford. Actually, they're right near True Colors. And they are the community healthcare organization similar to something like Fairhaven Health Clinic. There's us, the Pride Center here in New Haven, and then there's the Triangle Community Center in Norwalk. I would loop Life in My Days in Waterbury as a major queer organization also, because they center queer voices very strongly, but that's not the only population they serve. And that's run by Ahmed Alarjeen. They're a fabulous, amazing activist, community activist. They're one of the people working on the kind of Waterbury, New Haven, Bridgeport Mutual Aid Fund. And Life in My Days has taken a major role in helping organize that work. So I would consider them a queer serving organization, but they're not necessarily they're not only queer. OutCT in New London is another kind of majorly queer focused organization. They don't have a staff, so they're all volunteer run. And they produce a lot of youth programming based in New London. And then there's a couple of other smaller organizations that are mostly volunteer, like in Stanford, there's a youth focused organization. But then there's all the like queer healthcare organizations that are all nonprofits, Anchor Health, Healthcare Advocates International, and Circle Care Center. So it gets very complicated when you start breaking down like what are all the queer organizations. As far as community centers go, it's just us and the Triangle Community Center in Norwalk. So and the New Haven Pride Center is the only community center between New Haven and Boston. So we have there used to be one in Hartford. There's been organizations that have organized around community center work in both the Holyoke, Massachusetts, and the Worcester neighbor areas, but they've never kind of fully become a community center. They're like more situationally based. And Rhode Island has a youth-focused community center, similar to like our True Colors, but they're not like full. I mean, they do a lot of work, and Rhode Island Pride does a lot of community center work, but they're not like a community center in the same way. So we get folks from all over. I mean, we have people that cross over borders from Western Mass and Rhode Island, and even to the east, like New York border to the east, not New York City, but to the east. And programs like we partner with Citywide Youth and Planned Parenthood and Black Lives Matter New Haven to produce the Black and Brown Summer Camp. I think it was last year, there was 2 kids that came up from New York for it. And, there's folks that come and participate in programming in New Haven, whether we're sponsoring it or a part of it, or other folks are doing it, like, Citywide Youth centers queer, Black and Brown voices really prominently as part of their mission. Although they're not necessarily a queer only organization, again, because it's more about youth in general, not just for youth. But we work with them a lot. They're an amazing organization. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to nail down like who's the queer org and who's not.
You're the queer organization. You're the queer organization. You.
Well, there's so many community organizers who are queer that work on multiple issues, like both queer issues and then immigration or women's health or Black and Brown issues. So like there's, really we're a massive community. We're just not necessarily organized as like traditional nonprofits in every part of the state. So I would say there's queer organizations all over the state, just they're not necessarily maybe organized as formal nonprofits or working as formal nonprofits or community centers.
So what is the mission of the Pride Center? Because I don't know all the things that I don't know what the scope is. I know I'm always amazed at all the things that are launched out of there.
Thank you.
Arts, expression. I jumped on a Zoom conversation when you had some sister legislators on talking about legislative stuff, and I jumped in that conversation. Well, I didn't jump in; I just jumped in to listen, and it was quite impressive.
Thank you. No, it's been so. I would say so. We always classify our focus areas in 5 areas. So we do case management and support services, which is headed up by Juan Carlos Soto. And that is, everything from helping folks who are experiencing homelessness or food insecurity, joblessness. We have a lot of trans folks that come in and need help with personal documentation, need help with healthcare referrals, mental health resources, addiction services. All of that stuff kind of falls under case management and support services. We also have a lot of support groups and are home to a lot of community groups that may not necessarily be support groups that we've generated, so to speak. But so, for example, the Narcotics Anonymous that LGBTQ inclusive meets at the New Haven Pride Center. And there's an Alcoholics Anonymous that has met at the Pride Center before. They currently are not, but we have a relationship with that group as well. So that's all kind of case management support services. Then we have social programming, which is very broad. It includes a lot of our program officer work, the youth, Latinx, and women's program officers focus. So we do things like socials and events in bars and or other community spaces. Miranda, who's our women's program officer, does a lot of sober programming, because a lot of queer focused events take place in alcohol spaces. So they launched like a book club. They've launched programs around called Tea and Tunes, where there's like a DJ and tea tasting and like afternoon social. So things like that all falls under our social programming. We do arts, culture, and humanities programs, which, so for example, the talk you attended, LGBTQ women in politics, that's part of that kind of overall like humanities discussions. We have a film series that normally would run twice a month, which is called Doc U, and it's documentaries about the LGBTQ community. We do our art exhibits, performing arts programming. We commission one or two pieces of art a year. Like last year, we commissioned Elm City Dance Collective to create a dance piece about the relationship between trans folk and their bodies. And that was actually in conjunction with Nasty Women's exhibit, Complacent, which was about kind of owning one's body as a woman. So we kind of took that idea and applied it to the community and like did this really amazing dance performance. So all of that kind of falls under arts, culture, humanities. Then we segment out youth as its own focus area, because LGBTQ youth are at very high risk of things like homelessness. In Connecticut, actually, our percentage of queer youth who are experiencing homelessness is higher than the national average, which is like really, really depressing and really unfortunate. And so Allah, who you may know is a founder of Black Lives Matter New Haven, who's also our program officer. She also works in the school in Haven. She's phenomenal. So she works with our youth and designs all of our youth programming, which has a whole array. There's arts and culture pieces, there's discussion. We're in the process of developing a board that will be compiled of all youth from Greater New Haven that will advise our organization on how to serve youth, kind of using that a similar model to something like what Youth not Youth Continuum, CUI Youth Coalition has, where there's this like advisory board that's made up of youth voices. So that all falls under, and then there's the advocacy piece, which is number 5, which is includes city level, state level, and sometimes federal level advocacy. And that includes everything. It's not, obviously our focus is on queer advocacy, but we've signed on to all kinds of bills and supported all kinds of work of various different advocates around the state. And I go up and testify periodically. Other members of the staff have testified for bills that were important. And kind of that constant work that is advocacy for legal changes. And then general community organizing also falls under that. So working with groups around the city and the state that are doing grassroots organizing, and making sure that we're lending our space to them, helping organize around issues. We're really fortunate. The National Trans Lifeline, which is this incredible resource for trans people. It's a free call-in center that you can call and find support. And if you're, feeling suicidal, if you're feeling lonely, whatever it is, excuse me, you can call in and you can find support from other trans people. And a big chunk of their staff actually live in Connecticut, even though it's an international organization. So organizing those activists and advocates that happen to be local that are on a national platform, and making sure that we're just kind of constantly in the know of what's going on, and trying to help the community where we can. So yeah, so we do everything.
Let's shift gears. Let's shift gears a little bit, because you, the man, you, the person, is quite interesting. So talk to me about, when did you become? When did you know that drag was something you'd want to do? Like, when does one know that? Did you know that when you were like a little boy, or did you know?
So I have a long history of performing. I started taking ballet when I was like 2, and I studied ballet for about 10 years with a professional, like, retired dancer from New York Ballet. And
really,
I did. Miss Patsy, she was amazing. She had hair that hit the floor that she kept in this very tight bun. It was fabulous. But I studied ballet for 10 years. I did musical theater for like probably another 10 years. And it was one of those things that I loved performing. And when I went to college, I thought about getting a degree in performing, but I'm a very logical person. I was a math science major when I was in high school, and because in Turkey we have majors in high school, and so I was a math science major. I wanted to be an architect at one point in my life, but I went to when I came to college in the United States, I auditioned for a couple, including Juilliard actually, for some performing arts programs. And then I had this like aha moment where my logical brain was like, Patrick, you are not good enough to ever make a living off of performing as much as you love it. And so you need to really switch gears. And you need to do something else, because you're gonna be like hungry and sad your whole life, because you're never gonna. I had this like very logical conversation with myself. I have very like hard Vulcan logic. If you ever watched Star Trek, you'll get it. But
I am a fan.
I have very hard, cold Vulcan logic that like where I have these moments with myself and I talk myself off of bad decisions or ledges sometimes. But so I switched and studied art management, and that's what one of my I have 2 bachelors from the University of Hartford, and one of them is in arts management. And so I wanted to run a theater or work in theater for the rest of my life. And I actually worked at Hartford Stage for 2.5 seasons, and Arts and Ideas for 7 years. And yeah, so I when I was 18 and I just moved to the US and just come out of the closet, because that's what you do. You move to the US and you come out of the closet, because in the US, everybody's gay. At least that's what we thought in the Middle East. So I came out, and I went to my first gay bar, which was the Polo Club in Hartford, which was a drag cabaret, and met people like the Divine Spice and Diabolique, these kind of legends of Connecticut drag. And I just got really involved in the community and hung out backstage for about 10 years, and helped carry bags and help people with their boob contours and whatever else they needed backstage. And a good friend of mine started doing drag when we were in our early 20s, and I helped him get ready. And when he first started, I even did his makeup, and I would do like theater makeup, which looked terrible, but at the time we thought it looked good. And yeah, and so I was kind of the behind the scenes, what they call in the community, the drag monkey, that carries everything around and helps all the drag queens backstage or whatever. And I was turning 30. I'm actually only 16, but for the sake of this conversation, I was turning 30, and I went.
Oh, you're a baby.
I turned 35 last week, so I'm feeling
still
old.
A baby.
But no, I was turning 30, and I went to Robin Banks, who runs the #1 drag show in Connecticut, as she likes to market herself as. And she's this fabulous comedy drag queen that's been around probably 20 plus years, and run her show in New Haven for probably 10. And I went to Robin Banks and I said, hey, Robin, can I perform at your show? And she'd known me for years because I've been helping backstage at her show. I was like, I just want to do this. I want to cross it off my bucket list before I turn 30. And so the week before my 30th birthday, I performed at the Robin Banks show. And I did, instead of doing one number, which is what most starting drag queens do, I did 4. And
you're like the Billy Porter school of thought.
just did it. I just threw myself into it.
I'm just gonna take over.
and I had so much fun that I was like, well, maybe I'll do it again, and then maybe I'll do it again, and then all of a sudden I was doing it every week, and then here we are, 5 years later, still doing it.
And so, what is it about it that, I mean, it's got to be exhilarating and thrilling. I mean, it is performance. I mean, you have to step into character, and you just do this whole thing. I mean, it is mesmerizing.
Thank you. It's really cool. It's like this amazing acting challenge because you, at least in my case, and this isn't necessarily true for every drag performer, although most I would say it's true. You know, Kiki is a character that I've created. I always say to all my drag children that the best way to build a really solid character is to kind of take all the things you don't like about yourself and do the opposite, and then all the things you love about yourself, but make them larger than life. So Kiki,
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, no, that's how you create a good drag character. So Patrick is very shy with boys. Kiki is not shy at all. Patrick is an activist. Kiki's a bigger activist. You know, it's like this idea of taking your own personality and blending it into the character in a way that creates somebody who's real and authentic, but not necessarily you. And so I love being character. I love creating this character and being this character, and you know, being someone who's creative. You know, drag at the end of the day is art. You know, there might be people that will disagree with me, particularly people who are not fans of LGBTQ people. But and there's some folks in the community that make weird comparisons to drag to blackface, which are like not even close to being the same thing.
I've never heard that. Wow.
Oh yeah, no, there's this whole conversation about is drag blackface, and it frustrates me because
I would say no.
Yeah, because people who also make that argument are usually white people that don't understand what blackface is and don't understand like majorly oppressive history of why blackface is so horribly offensive.
Yes.
You know, versus like drag is not that at all. And
I never get the sense that drag is making fun of women or anything. I find it quite celebratory, actually.
And I hope that most people view it that way. And I will say, unfortunately, there are drag performers out there that do use language or think that in drag they can do all these things that really they shouldn't do and are really misogynistic. There are definitely performers out there, particularly drag queens, that do that. But the bottom line is that all drag is valid, and you know, if you're a trans performer, you can perform in drag. If you're a woman, you can do drag. Like everybody can do drag, right? And drag is this incredible art form that combines performance art, paint, and visual art. You know, music, because a lot of drag queens sing live. You know, like there's actually it's and most drag queens make everything themselves. They sit home sewing. Like I've learned how to use technology, which I'm horrible at all forms of technology. I look at our printer at the center and it breaks. You know, and like I know how to make mixes. I know how to create these like extremely complicated, you know, 7 layers of different types of music mixes that I've taught myself how to do. I've taught myself how to do makeup. I've taught myself how to sew so that I can sew a costume if I need to, you know. And most drag performers do all of those things, and they have to because it's the only way you're gonna have them. Because you're never making enough to have like some designer design all your costumes for you.
I think RuPaul is probably the largest drag queen that we know that's working in very, I guess, mainstream, right?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I mean, RuPaul is like super problematic about so many things, but you know, problematic behavior aside, you also have to give it to him that RuPaul was a Black man in the late 80s who became like an internationally acclaimed performance artist, queer performance artist in a dress that conquered film, modeling, TV. Like, actually, he broke so many glass ceilings. Like, you know, bad behavior aside, particularly transphobia aside, like you have to give it to him that he paved the way for so much for our community. And you have to be able to look at someone and see both sides of it. Like, obviously there's major problematic behavior. He's made some really horrible comments in the last few years, particularly about trans people, but other people too. And in his show, RuPaul's Drag Race promotes a very specific type of drag, and is not inclusive of the vastness of the amazing art that is drag. But he's still got a bunch of rednecks in the South to watch drag, and in some way that's probably making it better for queer people in those communities. Drag is not the whole community, and there's a lot of people that misunderstand what drag is in the community, both internally and externally. But there's the reality is that drag has done a lot for our community over the last 100 years. And when you look at World War II, and you look at Europe in World War II, and people who drag performers that would end up in concentration camps and would do entertainment in these camps, you would look at, they were often community leaders within the queer community, and they would hide people in their homes, including Jewish and non-community members. You look at the 80s, and if someone would die and their families had abandoned them and didn't care, drag performers would put on a show to pay for the funerals. Drag queens have been on the front lines of things like Stonewall, the Stonewall riots in New York City, before that, the Canton riots in San Francisco. Drag has been an integral part of the community, and particularly activism within the community for decades. And that's the truth. Is our role in the community changing over the years? Of course it is. Everybody's role changes. Communities evolve. But one of the things that I love about drag, and I've always loved about drag, is I see drag as the kind of unique artistic contribution to the global world of art. And when you think
I love seeing the drag queens read the stories to the children.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Have you been watching?
Oh my God, it's my favorite thing.
we recorded a whole bunch of it. Wait till you see the one on Sunday. Mia's on Sunday. You will just sit and laugh the entire time.
And these children are so enthralled, like they love it.
Yeah, we released one yesterday with Diamari LaBeija from Hartford, and it's all in Spanish, and the whole thing is in Spanish. And
I love it.
She was so nervous about reading in Spanish because she's completely bilingual. She's Puerto Rican, and she's this fabulous queen from Hartford. But she was so nervous because she's like, I don't really read in Spanish since I was a kid. But yeah, no, it's I don't know. Drag is fun, and drag is meant to be fun. It's my one of my drag daughters and I always say, like, drag is fierce and fun. It's just not fierce and fun to be in because it's painful. But it's it should be fun, and like it's serious. Like, it's a job for me. I make part of my living off of it, and I'm hurting right now not having that income. But it's it's also, it should be fun, and if it's not fun, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
If it's annoying you or whatever, like, it might be time to retire.
So before we get off, give me a little bit of what you hope for the future, for yourself, for the Pride Center. Like, what's the biggest dream?
Oh, that's a loaded question. There's so many ways.
I know. It always is. It always is. And there's no real answer to it except, in the moment.
Yeah. My hope and dream for this center is that as we continue to evolve, assuming hopefully we all survive this, and the door's still open after COVID-19, doing all those things. I hope that we continue to be an organization that evolves to continually serve the very vast needs of the community. Every day I am reminded of things that we could or should be doing that we either don't have the resources for, don't have the abilities for, don't have the right people at the table yet. And I think that's the reality of serving an extremely diverse community. I think you can say the same thing about, like, legislative leadership, right? When you look at a community, whether it's a smaller community like the LGBTQ community of New Haven or the city of New Haven, there's going to be a lot of diversity in it and a lot of diverse needs. And, I would love to hope that there will come a time that we could be an organization that serves every single person's need. But we will have to constantly evolve to make sure that we are making people feel included and able to access what we have, and making sure that we're evolving what we have to be in service of the needs. So I just hope that we continue to be an organization that does that and continuously evolve to serve the greater needs, and serve the needs as they change. Because what needs we were serving in 2017 may not serve the community in 2020, especially during COVID-19 or post COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that we continue to build an organization that is flexible enough and nimble enough to always put community first, and put our egos aside, whether it's the organizational's ego or individual staff members' ego, and also not fall victim to becoming or creating savior complexes, and always working with the community for the betterment of both the organization and the community, and centering community voices rather than a single person's ego or voice.
And that, my friend, is why you are a New Haven hero.
Oh yeah. You're a hero too, girl. We were named heroes together.
I'm telling you, when I'm telling you, I went on Facebook and I saw Luciana's post. I didn't even pay attention to the picture. I just saw her saying thank you to the arts, and I didn't even notice myself. I was like, wait, so that's what I was like, wait, what?
I'm not gonna lie, I still have a mixed feelings. Like, on one hand, I'm so grateful, and like the fact that yes, it had my face, but it specifically said, if you read the part about it's the Patrick Dunn and the staff of the New Haven Pride Center, which I really appreciated, because honestly, everyone around the table is working so hard at the center right now. But it was like, I felt guilty being named one, because I feel like there are people, like there are friends of mine who are doctors or nurses or working in the hospital system right now that, like, I talk to, I try to check in with them a lot, and I'm hearing them things like, well, I know I'm going to get it, so it's just a matter of time. It's like, I'm like, these are the real heroes. I'm just like sitting behind a computer trying my best to like serve the community without a home, right? But at the same time, it's like, I mean, to be recognized for what we're doing is also like super special. So I have mixed feelings. I really appreciate the Arts and Ideas, and Eddie in particular, who was one of the people who nominated. I don't know who else.
Yeah.
But it was just like, at the same time, I feel insanely guilty, because there are people that I know within the queer community or without the queer community that are like literally taking food to people's homes every day because they don't, like, because they're older and they shouldn't be outside, or they literally don't have food, or I think of someone like Max on our staff who works in a homeless shelter when he's not working for us, and his staff, there's been like 2 cases of COVID on people on his staff, and so he's literally putting himself at risk for the youth of our greater community every day. And I feel guilty being named a hero when people like that are doing that kind of work.
You are deserving of this honor.
So are you, Babz. So are you, Babz.
Well, we'll see. But the jury is still out on that. But you are definitely awesome, deserving.
Babz. You do a lot. The jury is definitely, my jury has all voted yes.
I mean, it was a wonderful thing that the Arts and Ideas, and I hope that they keep doing it. Like, I hope they keep, like, every other week or something, or every month, they have some new heroes and get around to just about everybody in the city, right? So that people feel because we are all connected. Like, this is the thing about this city that I love so much. It's the richness of the depth of people's hearts and caring about what happens to the city. Whatever side you're on, people care deeply about what happens in this city. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you and what you're doing. I love the work that you're doing. I love the drag world. I love.
We gotta get you out to a show, Babz.
I have to come.
Yeah, you can see how funny I am.
I know you're funny. I mean, just what I've seen you do. Just at the Long Wharf Theater when you guys showed up for that, and what you did for the Arts Council luncheon. I mean, I just, so yeah, put me on the list. I'll come to stuff.
Yeah,
I'm fabulous.
You know what you need to come to is you need to come to Dragapalooza in July.
Yes,
Dragapalooza is fabulous.
Yes.
and it's so much fun. Lucy Gelman comes and writes about it every year. I love Lucy Gelman so much. Thank you, Lucy
listen,
Gelman.
if Lucy Gelman ain't at your event, you don't have an event.
No, exactly. This year, I just need to get Chris Randall to come, and like literally, we will have officially become the biggest drag event because we will have.
Oh my God!
And Chris Randall.
I think you're absolutely right. That's the team right there. So thank you so much for spending your morning with me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
And we're doing Ramadan together.
Yes, we are. We have to. It'll be fun.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. You're my Ramadan partner.
Yeah. I hope COVID doesn't go all the way to the end of Ramadan, because we were actually talking with Life in My Days about doing a queer like iftar, break the bread moment at the dinner. Because their Life in My Days is executive director or organizer is queer and Muslim also, and so we were talking about doing like a queer Muslim for an iftar moment. So I'm really hoping that this doesn't go until the end of Ramadan.
I know. Oh, well, I'll prayers for that. So thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Babz.
I'll see you out here in these social media streets soon.
Yes, and then in the real street soon, hopefully.
Yes, and you gotta come to the porch.
Yes, I know, I do. Your porch was fun, much bigger and much more fun than mine.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Harry. Woo!